I remember just sitting in the theater, just crying and praying and saying, like, I want to be like those girls. I want to act. I want to dance. I want to inspire people like that film did for me. Because at the time, I was going through a pretty extreme depression. I was so worried about what everyone else thought about me, to the point where I was literally like throwing up every week. 6 years later, I ended up playing the lead role in the sequel to that film. If that's not a story about our ability to manifest incredible things, and I don't know what is. Everyone told me I was crazy for ever thinking I would be successful in, film and TV, because I come from a family of doctors in Phoenix, Arizona. I kept listening to people like you, anyone you could think about that would, that teaches like, hey, you can create the life that you want. And whenever I got discouraged, and when agents and managers were saying, you're not ready, you'll never be successful, I just kept being brave. If you love something, and if you believe in something, and you know that your gifts and talents, like this is what you're supposed to be doing, you will be successful. Oh my gosh, Robert Downey Jr, Ryan Gosling, like in Nice Guys. It was just like, probably watched Notebook 1,000 times, and so to get to work with him.
Rachel, welcome to the Business Mentor Podcast. Thank you for joining us again for the second time.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here, and thank you for doing all you do, to add so much value to the world and so much inspiration and wisdom to people who, could really utilize it.
Yeah, thank you so much. Because we started talking about a year ago, didn't we? We got talking on Instagram, and we stay in contact. And I watch what you do, and you watch what I do, and that's what we're just talking off air about. How inspiring people is by telling your journey authentically, and if that inspires people, that's great. But I want to go into your story because a lot of my viewers on YouTube, because we launched on YouTube now, have probably not heard of your background. They've probably seen you about. So tell us a bit about your story growing up, because I know it's fascinating for my listeners. So let's go back there and we'll come back round.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I always love to tell people, I have been so blessed to get to star in so many movies and TV shows, and, speak on big stages and do a lot of things that as a young girl, I would have never even in a million years thought was possible, except for this little part of me that was so driven and so inspired by, I saw a movie that changed my life when I was a little girl. And it was one of those times when I was just so inspired and so changed by a film. I don't know if anybody listening has ever seen a movie or watched a video or heard a podcast, and you're just like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do that. And I don't care what anybody says. And I remember just sitting in the theater, just crying and praying and saying, like, I want to be like those girls. I want to act. I want to dance. I want to inspire people like that film did for me. Because at the time, I was going through a pretty extreme depression, and I felt so alone and scared and unsure of myself. And I was so worried about what everyone else thought about me, to the point where I was literally like throwing up every week, because I was just so, there was so much stress that I had actually created in my own internal world. And basically, after I saw that movie, I also got really into personal development. Like, I came across a book called As a Man Thinketh, and it just rocked my world. It was my first introduction of like, wow, like my thoughts matter. And I remember being really mad that they didn't tell me that when I was like 5 years old, that it mattered what I thought, it affected how I felt, and therefore affected my reactions and my actions in life. And I just became obsessed with everything I could find on personal development, on mindset, on law of attraction, on manifestation, and just started putting those principles to practice. And I mean, literally saw that movie when I was 14 years old. Everyone told me I was crazy for ever thinking I would be successful in, film and TV, because I come from a family of doctors in Phoenix, Arizona, like nothing to do with that industry. And when I started acting and dancing, I just loved it so much that I felt what it felt like to not live in fear anymore, because I found what I just loved. It didn't feel like work. It didn't feel like it was like this stressful thing. But I worked my ass off, and it didn't feel like it. And 6 years later, after I saw that movie when I was 14, I ended up playing the lead role in the sequel to that film. And that was so I saw Center Stage when I was 14. I star in Center Stage 2 when I was 19 to 20 years old. And if that's not a story about our ability to manifest incredible things, and I don't know what is, and along that journey, I mean, I had to move to LA when I was 18. I was terrified. I didn't know anybody. I cried myself to sleep a lot, but I kept listening to people like you and to people like Tony Robbins and Wayne Dyer and anyone you could think about that would, that teaches like, hey, you can create the life that you want. And whenever I got discouraged and whenever people were laughing in my faces and when agents and managers were saying, you're not ready, you'll never be successful, I just kept being brave. I kept doing the disruptive thing. And I kept saying, I'm just going to keep going. I'm just going to keep trying. I'm just going to keep learning. I'm just going to keep growing. And somehow was able to create that experience. And from that on, several different films and TV shows consistently ever since.
Yeah, so tell me about that, because that mindset's so powerful at some young age, because, we've all experienced being told we can't do it. I got told in business I'm not going to be successful, and you kind of get through it. But in your industry, which is very, very tough, I know a few actresses and actors, and it's such a tough gig. Yeah, it's really competitive. I mean, You mentioned tell a bit more about that mindset and how you got over that, because there's a lot of young entrepreneurs or young people looking to get into business that, like you said, I think we're in a world now when you get one setback and you kind of give up. So talk a bit about that mindset, maybe some tips and something about so people can listen to that.
Well, I think one of my favorite analogies is when you watch a baby learning how to walk. Imagine if a baby, how do they learn how to walk? They take a couple steps and they fall down, and then they get back up and they try again and they try again, and they try again. And imagine if a baby was like, I fell down. I guess I'm not supposed to be a walker. I guess I'll never walk again. I'll just crawl the rest of my life. Like, that's not how it works. And I think we're born with that innate instinct to just keep trying and to keep learning and to keep growing and to be curious about the world and about how things work. And I think what I'm so passionate about is teaching how curiosity and creativity are one of our greatest superpowers to fulfillment and success. But they get like beaten out of us, and we get told, oh, that's not important. That's just for creative people, or that's just for painters or actors. And that's just so not true. Everything in life is about this creation. Like this podcast is a creation. How I wake up and what I do in my day is like, what did I do to create? How did I create my day? Am I living on autopilot, just like letting it pass me by? Or am I actively thinking and questioning and being like, is this making me happy? Is this moving me forward? Is it not? Can I create something different? So I think that mindset of realizing that we all are born with this innate, divine, incredible superpower of curiosity and creativity. But it's a muscle. And if we don't use it, we lose it. So really learning to implement patterns and habits of just asking questions, like, okay, what is this? And could I try it? And if I fall down, that they're replacing failure with just learning. Like, I just learned, I can't fail. And I think setting up yourself to win, like if I had the unconscious rule that if I didn't get the job, then I failed, I would never be able to keep going. But if I set the agreement in myself that there is no such thing as failure, like I just learn, I just grow. It might hurt a little, it might feel uncomfortable, like my ego might be like, oh man. But if I'm only in it for in the moment, I'm never going to be able to create long-term success and happiness. I think so many people, myself included, are so driven by outcomes that they can't control. And if we're so driven by outcomes that we can't control, we will always feel less than, we will never feel enough, and we won't be able to be in it for the long haul. But if we're in it for the enjoyment of the growth, the enjoyment of the process, the enjoyment of becoming better, then we'll be able to stay in it for a long time, and we'll be able to actually enjoy our lives.
Yeah, I love that. You said a lot of good things in there. And I interviewed David McCall, who's a friend, is a billionaire, and he mentioned about the first thing a mentor should teach you is that you need to fail. And it's okay to fall off that horse. What's not okay is getting back on. If you fail to get back on, that's not okay. And I think the sooner people realize that, especially in the times we're in now, which is very difficult for many business industries, it's important to have that mindset of, like I said, keep on going.
Yeah. I mean, even today, I was up for a big job and I found out right before this podcast, I didn't get it. And so I could be like, oh, my life sucks. This is horrible. But I feel like it's the muscle for anybody who's an athlete of any kind or into physicality. My mind, growing up an athlete, is so wired that way. And the more I start to reprogram my mind that emotional strength and mental strength is the same as gaining physical strength, that there is pain in physical strength. Like when you're lifting weights, you feel pain, but you learn to like almost love that pain. It's like a good pain. I really believe that we can get to that same point with mental and emotional strength, but it's all in the way we perceive it, right? Perception is everything. If I perceive failure as this thing that is awful and scary and hard, I will never be able to throw myself into situations that might end in failure. But if I perceive it as this basically like an awesome gift wrapped in ugly wrapping paper, that I just get to open the gift, after a while, then I'm going to be way more apt to go after things because my perception is completely different.
Yeah, it's awesome. Credit to you for coming on, because I when you have the first sort of setback, because I've lost multi-million pound contracts, the first one is like sickening, the first job you don't get. But as you get used to it, you realize, okay, well, the reason I get this is because something big is coming. And if you look back, you look at history, but you've got to get past that first one. And once you get that feeling, you still get it, like you said, but you're like, okay, I'm over it. Let's move on now. Let's get on this podcast. Let's give some positive energy out because the next thing's coming, right?
Absolutely. Well, and I just think it's all in the way, again, perception. Like I'm so obsessed with that word and that concept of like, and also knowing that living in this abundance mindset that we talked about, like I really believe there is enough for everybody to win. And we're all the only versions of ourselves, and we're only able to affect the world in a certain unique way that we each individually are. Like you're able to impact people in a way that I would never be able to, and vice versa. And anybody listening, you guys have so many incredible, unique gifts and experiences that allow your like so much power to be able to impact and affect the world in a way that nobody else can, because you're you. And I think especially in business and entrepreneurship and creation, there's this mindset of like, oh, it's already been done before. Like, oh, he has a podcast. On business, I don't need, I shouldn't do it. And it's like, well, no, because you're you, and you're the only you there will ever be, ever. Like in the whole entire time and universe and space, like there will never be another you that's able to do the things that you're able to do, because you're unique. Like you're not like anybody else. And so therefore you'll be able to affect people in a completely different way.
I love that because, when we first started the podcast, same thing for me. I had that mindset of Tim Ferriss has done it, everyone's done it. But then we launched Like a Proper Business, and we actually outdid Tim Ferriss on the launch. And the thing for me is, I always encourage people, just like yourself, you've got your own story. So, take inspiration from these influencers, I would say, people like, me and you putting it out there. But, you can still do just as good. And that's what it's about, empowering other people.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And more, I feel like, so much of my life I was driven by achievement, which got me really far, right? Like it really did. But it came with a lot of suffering and a lot of stress and a lot of physical illnesses, because as a lot of us know, like stress and fear literally weakens our immune system. And so if we're living in a constant state of stress and fear, we're literally asking to age quicker, to be sick more often, and to just not feel that great. But if we can be driven from a place of enjoyment, and this is what I'm finding recently, and I can't even tell you like the inner peace and the freedom that has come from making this shift. And this is just one concept. There's a lot of deep principles that go along in how to get here. But doing some deep inner work, healing a lot of past traumas that I didn't even know were holding me back, and realizing that, wow, like, what if I could be driven by enjoyment, like enjoyment in the process, rather than driven by the achievement of the goal? Because no matter what the goal is, like as soon as you get it, there's going to be another goal that you have. And so if you're just constantly going from achievement to achievement to achievement, and you're never enjoying it, we're going to wake up on our deathbed and say, did I even enjoy this life that I had? Or was I just like achieving and not really being present, or not really being happy or joyful or fully experiencing what I was doing? And I think I know for myself, I lived a lot of my life that way, and I will no longer tolerate it. Like I want to experience my life, and I want to fully enjoy the process. And what I've noticed is that when I'm living in my full joy and the enjoyment of growing and learning and falling down and getting back up again, I'm actually able to create way more, way faster, and be way more fulfilled, happy, and successful at it. Because people want to be around people who are full of joy and happiness, and people want to work with people like that. And it's like you become a magnet to other awesome people and other awesome opportunities because you're operating at such an elevated level.
Yeah, 100%. And, I like watching your content and myself and most content creators is do your best. Deliver your best. I've seen your videos on Instagram. They're always done professionally. You're putting your energy into it. And if you do that and then the process, you enjoy it, you get a better result. But if you're trying to wait for this big, massive thing, you forget the enjoyment of creating the content, which is what it's all about. These interviews, I love doing them, and your content, you love doing them. That's really important. But that story is fascinating, and I encourage people to go back to my earlier podcast. We're really deep in this and follow your website. But how are things at the moment? Obviously, as a content creator, it's a different thing because people ask me, well, I'm doing like 13 hours of content. And although it's banking the content, but, for yourself, you've got over 1 million followers, you're watched and followed by, millions around the world. How has it been for you currently?
In the current quarantine lockdown situation? Yeah, I think at first there was a lot of, well, I'll just say there's fear, there's a lot of fear. And I was like, oh my gosh, how are we going to get through this? What's going to happen? As we were in the unknown. And I think in the unknown, we each have the opportunity to feed the fear or feed our faith, faith in possibilities, faith in opportunities, faith in our ability to create. And, I love this story, and I always remember it that, that we all have these two animals that we have with us all the time, or voices, whatever you want to call it. I like to picture these two wolves, and whichever wolf I feed, the fear wolf or the faith wolf, it will get bigger. Anything you feed gets bigger. And so I really felt in the beginning when I fed the fear, I felt consumed by it. And I felt like it was difficult to create from that place and to be my most optimal self from that place. But when I fed the faith wolf, and the possibilities and the opportunities, what are the good things that could happen from the situation? What could I create to help people during the situation? How could I become a better version of myself during this interesting time? And what are all the beautiful things that are going on in the world during this situation? It was like, it's a completely different experience internally. And I'm a huge believer that our external world is created by our internal world. And so the more we can focus on we each have this ability to literally create whatever experience we want to create. And it's affected by where we're putting our focus and what kind of questions I'm asking myself. If I'm asking myself the question oh, this is so bad. When is it going to end? It's never going to be over. What are all the horrible things that are happening right now? I'm going to feel that. And I'm not going to be able to be the best version of myself. I'm not going to be able to give and help and serve in the way that I know that I can. But if I focus on all the beautiful things and all the possibilities and the opportunities, way more able to do incredible things. And but I think it's really important for everyone to feel, to really feel what they're going through and to not suppress emotions, to feel it. And, I've been working for 2 years on this program called Transform My Life that I told you about. And we, go over these really practical, powerful principles in our program that talk about that and how to really master that skill of shifting your focus so that you can, because sometimes, you're in that wheel of I call it the spinning wheel of death, where you can't get out of a thought loop. And it's really challenging. And I've learned, very practical, powerful ways to be able to master the skill of, if I feel fear, if I feel like I can't get out of that loop, to be able to shift my focus and to be able to fully integrate and literally create a completely different experience in my body. And so, for me, this lockdown, it's been on full just, what can I create? How can I grow? What can I give? And I've been in a much more healthy space. There were some days when I definitely I just cried all day and I felt really sad. And I think it's important to also have those days just so that we can feel and we can empathize and we can have compassion for what's going on, but then have a have a timeline for yourself. Like, okay, I'm going to feel this feeling, but I'm only going to feel it. I'm going to be done in a day, or I'm going to be done in a week, and I'm moving on, you know? Because otherwise you can get stuck in that space.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you mentioned that, because it's so true. I mean, even myself, I'll allow myself that day, and then once that day is over, I won't even fight the day. If you're having a rough day, just take it as a bad day, then get back on it next while. Because I think people fight it. The more you fight it, the more it continues and it grows, and before it's a week, it's a month.
What that quote says, whatever you resist persists.
Yeah.
Right? Like if we're resisting feeling sad, if we're resisting feeling a certain way, it's going to just get worse and worse and worse. And so absolutely. You know, and interesting enough, I was working on a really, really big film right before this happened, and it was really bummed out because, you know, we didn't get to finish. And this is like a huge role for me. It's a really, really intense film where it's a psychological thriller, and I play a character who she just goes through so much, and you don't know what's real and what's not real. And it was such an incredible experience, and we had 1 day left, and they had to cancel it. And we, you know, we're basically on hold until this is over. And we'll still be able to finish it. It's just one of those things where you're like, okay, like these are some of the real challenges and that's very minimal, I know, compared to some other people's experiences, but you know, it's rough, you know, it's hard.
So just going to that industry in your business, so in your acting, I know you've got different kind of things that you work on. So has stuff just paused now on acting? Mm-hmm. I'm sure it has, yeah?
Yeah, because, you know, like I said, all the films that were going on have been on hold. Even the releases of big films have been pushed, you know, and I'm so grateful that the films that I worked on, you know, we're basically almost done, and we just have one more day that hopefully we can even have a small crew and film in, you know, the near future. But I am about to be a part of this really cool new show called White Dragon that is such an awesome, cool dream role for me, because I love fighting and action hero characters. And, you know, one of my big dreams that I always throw out there is like to play a role like Wonder Woman. I mean, like that is my ultimate like dream. And this is like basically like a more mature version of Power Rangers, where I get to do a lot of fighting and a lot of like really empowering badass scenes. So I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, I saw some of your stuff on YouTube. You know, you got some kicks and punches. So I think you're putting it out there now. So that role is out in the open now. So Wonder Woman, here we come kind of thing. So yeah, so I'm really excited, and obviously we'll follow your journey as you go on. But you know, the podcast is about helping entrepreneurs and different kind of things. So you know, your story's been fascinating. I love the mindset, and we'll talk about what you're doing just shortly after. But if you were to like give some advice to somebody that's trying to get into your area or even in business, what tips would you give them?
Oh man, well, I'll tell you a personal story of, like, you know, I was talking about the Transform My Life program. We're for 2 years. When we started, I thought it would have been done and out and creating so much money like a year ago. Filmed the whole thing, and then right when we were about to release it, we're like, this isn't good enough. You know, like we can do this better. And as much as I was like cringing inside, and for any, you know, business owner or creator, this feeling of like when you've worked so hard on something, so hard, and then you're like, nope, got to start over. Like part of you just like feels like it wants to die inside. But I'm so grateful that we did. It took a whole other year to make it what it is now. But now I can say that this is one of the things that I'm most proud of. And what I hope for all business owners, creators, entrepreneurs is that we really feel so good about the work that we do and find this balance. We put out a video recently called Done is Better Than Perfect. And I think it's a really true principle that there's this really beautiful balance of getting in the game, putting something out, and continue to get feedback and to fail, if you will, and get back up again, and keep growing, and not hold yourself back by not even getting in the game. But at the same time, making sure that the work you're putting out, you feel really proud of, and also that you're not affected by its outcome. Because sometimes I think, you know, especially when we're starting, and for anybody like me that is like a pretty big optimistic person, you can be like, oh, everyone's going to love this and everyone's going to buy it. And and then you put it out and you don't get what you thought it was going to be, and like nobody's buying it, nobody's really engaging with it, and you're like, oh my gosh. Yeah. And at that point you have a choice, you know, like, are you going to choose to give up and go the safe route and do something completely different and give up on your goals and your dreams, or are you going to keep going and take it as big lessons learned? And my hope for everyone is that if you love something and if you believe in something and you know that your gifts and talents, like this is what you're supposed to be doing, if you keep going, if you keep learning, if you keep growing, like, you will be successful. If you stop, if you quit, like, you'll never know what's possible. But I also think that quitting has a very negative stereotype to it. If something is not making you happy, if something is not lighting your soul on fire, if something is not fulfilling you, then I think there's some real serious questions to ask, you know, and say, like, do I really want to do this? Or is there something else I want to create? Because sometimes, you know, I thought for sure I was supposed to be an Olympic gymnast. Like, the whole first part of my life was gymnastics. I gave my heart and soul, blood, sweat, and tears, so many injuries. And everybody wanted that for me. My mom and dad had put so much money, time, energy, effort into it. And I had to wake up and say, like, I'm not happy in this. Like, I'm so unhealthy. I'm so sick. I'm so terrified of what everyone thinks of, or not being the best. And I had to finally get up the courage to quit. And that was one of the best decisions I ever made, you know, and I would have never known what was possible for me in this world that brings me so much joy and happiness if I wouldn't have had the courage to stand up for what I knew inside was best for me, regardless of what anybody else said. You know, so I hope anybody else out there really follows their joy, you know, follows their passion and their purpose, regardless of what anybody else thinks, and to remember that it's all opinions. Like, one of my favorite quotes is from Meryl Streep, and when she was auditioning for King Kong, they told her that she was too ugly for the role. And imagine if she would have believed that. You know, imagine if she would have said, oh man, you guys are right. I guess I'm not supposed to be an actor. I'm just going to, you know, be a teacher or whatever it was, you know. And not that being a teacher is bad, but just saying, like, for her, like, we all know what Meryl Streep is. And what she said was so beautiful. She said, thank you for your opinion. I'm going to go find another opinion in the sea of thousands that is of a kinder tide. And that to me just sums up everything in business and entrepreneurship and in acting in the creator world. It's just realizing that everything we hear from everybody is just their opinion, and we get to choose which opinions we listen to and that we live by.
Yeah, and I think that's so important. Even now with social media, obviously millions of followers, I've got hundreds of thousands of followers. You know, you're not always going to get positive people, and people just sometimes just want to get your attention. So You've got to be very headstrong to realize that if someone is saying something, sometimes it's not actually their true intention. You know, it's something behind that. So you've got to be stronger and big enough to rise above it.
And something that really helps me filter out which opinions I listen to and which ones I don't listen so hard to is I always ask myself, do I want to create the reality that they've created for themselves? If I don't, then I'm not going to listen very hard. But if I do, then I'm going to listen really hard. You know, it's like the same kind of concept of, do you want to listen to the person who's teaching you how to make money, who's a homeless person on the street, or do you want to listen to a billionaire who's crushing it? You know, their opinions will be very different. And you get to choose who you listen to. And that choice of who you listen to will affect your whole trajectory of life. And it will align with wherever they are. So, yeah, I think that has really helped.
And it's important to, like, even on social media, you've got to be careful what you consume, because YouTube will give you recommended viewing. So if you're viewing this content, it's going to keep coming at you. Do you know what I mean? With the algorithms. So you've got to be careful.
Everybody's going to share their opinions. You know, like there's thousands of billions of them. And it's so easy to be like, oh, this person's doing this video, they've got to be right, you know. It's like, no. Like, what?
I think so. Yeah, someone said, I think a picture, you know, says 1,000 words. A video is like a million words, you know. So if someone's out there saying something, that's why you've got to, like, be, you know, when you do any programs or anything, I always say, do your research, do your due diligence. You know, make sure you research the person. You know, people will say things, unfortunately, to manipulate people. That's just happened. That's the way of the world. So it's important that you research. And I always say that to anybody who works with anybody going forward.
Absolutely. And I think to go off of, we all have this like beautiful internal guidance system. And again, I think that's something that's, at least for me, was kind of like, I had to learn how to listen. I had to learn how to trust it. And so much of my life, I was always looking for other people's ideas, advice, opinions. And I never just like went within, because I really believe we all have this internal guidance system that's going to lead us in the right direction. It's just learning how to tap into that. And I think that's why things like meditation and journaling and like mirror work, or, you know, like it's just so important. Or even breath work. Like breath work has rocked my world. If anybody hasn't gotten into that yet, I would highly recommend it. It's amazing.
Tell me about that, because I'm interested. I mean, is that just breathing slowly? And
it's actually, so there's lots of different ways to do it. I think one of the easiest ways, I mean, if you follow, Wim Hof teaches a great method of breath work. And it's, for me, it's like a really fast way to access the really powerful meditative state that can sometimes be difficult. And really, there's different kinds of breathing, but the different breathwork classes that I've gone to, it's literally, you actually breathe really fast for a certain amount of time. Like you're just going, it's literally to get as much oxygen in the body. There's also breathwork classes that are only through mouth breathing. And it's literally, so your body is so full of oxygen. And then after breathing like that for a long time, you'll feel like you almost start to feel the electricity all throughout your body. Some people experience like hands cramping or like just weird things. But then you hold your breath and you hold it after breathing that long. And it's this interesting experience of, one, you can hold your breath way longer. Like I've almost held my breath for 3 minutes before. And in that state, able to access like such deep states of consciousness and in like wisdom and guidance that I've never been able to experience before. And then it's just, you kind of can do rounds of that. You can do quick versions, or even if it's like a 5-minute where you do 100 quick breaths and then you just hold, and you take a big deep breath and you hold as long as you can. And then you let it out, and then you do 100 more quick breaths, and then you hold. And I do 3 rounds of that pretty much every day. And it's, oh man, it's this like state of like inner peace and guidance and wisdom that I've never experienced before.
Sounds awesome. I'm going to check that out for sure.
Yeah,
but I want to thank you for just having a conversation. I've got some quick questions I want to ask you. It's great to catch up. I would like to check on my friends and check how you are. So it's good to have a conversation at the same time. So look, just some fun questions. So if you could work with anybody, who would you like to work with and why?
Only one person?
Okay, you can go for 2. We'll give you 2.
Okay, okay, Gal Gadot.
Okay.
She's like, oh my gosh, inspiration of mine. And I just absolutely adore her. And gosh, I would say her, and I want to give a guy as well. Honestly, I've done stuff with them before, but more so, I think a dream of mine is like Tom and Lisa Bilyeu are huge inspirations for me for impact theory.
Yeah, I like them, yeah.
And I think definitely a big dream of mine is to get to, I know what their big dream is, to kind of build the new Disney. And so to get to work with them on those kind of projects would be like, just so much of I wanted. So my big missions in life is to really mix entertainment and this kind of education on emotional intelligence and mindset and resilience, that I think we can teach those principles in a really powerful way through film, through characters. And I don't think it's been done that really done at the highest capacity yet.
Yeah. Well, Tom came to London, so I'm looking to get him on my podcast as well, because I'm a huge follower of his impact theory. So if I get him on, I will be mentioning your name.
Yes.
I'll make sure you get in there. And who's the best actor you've worked with?
Oh my gosh, Robert Downey Jr., Ryan Gosling. Like in Nice Guys, it was just like I probably watched Notebook 1,000 times, and so to get to work with him. And there was actually a time where we had like a dance party in Nice Guys. There's a big party scene, and just got to dance with him, and it was just like it was so cool. And just to see too people who have done so much incredible work in the world that are still just such beautiful people. I've also seen the opposite, and it breaks my heart. And so to get to be around people who are so even with all the fame and the money and, you know, all the things that come with that, there's still such beautiful, genuine people. It was awesome.
Yeah, you hear the bad things, but like I said, the good things really outweigh them, you know, and
Yes.
you've got to get that positivity out. And look, before we close the podcast, tell us where people can find you and a bit about what you're doing at the moment. So if people want to get in touch, just feel free to mention that now.
Thank you so much. And thank you for having me on here. I just love our conversation, especially after, like I told you what I went through. I'm in such a different mood now.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's good. It's good. It's good positive energy.
Yes. So great place to go is my website. It's Rachele, RACHELEB Smith.com. As well as, like I said, that new program we launched, it's at tml.life. Anybody that is looking for some big transformation, like I said, I've done a lot of cool things in my life, and that's one of the things I'm most proud of, that I know can really help people. And I have a couple new films coming out that is really exciting. One that I play opposite Danny Trejo, and I play a character that has epilepsy. It's a really challenging role and something that I'm a little bit nervous about, just because, you know, like that's a lot of weight, and I just really wanted to give the families and the people that actually live with that, you know, as much, I guess, I don't know what the right word is, but I guess, you know, compassion, love, realism that I could. And to get to work opposite Danny Trejo was such a dream, and he's such a beautiful human doing such incredible things in the world. And then another one called The Method, and a really funny comedy called In Other Words, opposite Chris Kattan, who was also just like an incredible human and comedian. Watching Night at the Roxbury's before I worked with him, you know, so I was just really excited. And then the new action series called White Dragon, that I'm going to be on too.
So much going on. And well, when you release them, let me know. I'll share with my audience and people who follow me. And obviously make sure you follow Rachele on Instagram and all the channels. Your story is amazing and it inspires lots of people. Awesome. Thank you for that. So thank you for watching that video. If you want to see other videos and great guests, make sure you subscribe and like the video. So you can now head over to my website where you can see a bit of my story of building and scaling my businesses, and also all the free resources and tools which you can help you on your journey in your brand and your business. You can also subscribe on the podcast, so you can check on iTunes, Spotify and other locations where you can find the podcast. And I look forward to catching you very soon. Thank you.